Hey guys, welcome back to Jardin Autoworks. If you have a love of cars, if you like to work on cars, dune buggies, trucks, whatever, you've come to the right place. Make sure and hit that like and subscribe button for more content. Today we're going to be working on the red dune buggy, so let's get to it. Alright guys, so just so you can see where I want to go with mounting the radiator, and my idea is to put a cross brace right through here, make it as low as possible so that the radiator is not higher than the back seats. So what I want to do is I want to put that cross brace in there and then mount the radiator about there so that the fans are pulling the air across the seats and across the fuel tank, but it's just sitting high enough that if I need to work on something, pull the starter or whatever, I can still work on those things without pinching any wires or getting anything too tight so that I can't get in there. The fuel pump and fuel filter sit right here in its own bracket. That came out of an '83 Ford Thunderbird. So the setup is real nice. It puts everything in its own place and segregates the pump from the filter, and it even has the custom lines that use the stock push-on fittings with the keeper keys that go in there. And then we're just using fuel injection hose with clamps on the ends to come into the fuel pump and then out of the fuel filter. So what mounting the radiator between the seats and the motor gets me is a little more room in the back so that it protects the radiator, but keeping it low in that area helps that if something were to go wrong with the radiator, it springs a pinhole leak or something like that, that it also gives me the buffer on the gas tank and the backs of the seats so that it just doesn't spray me with hot fluid. So just trying to keep it low in the back here also gives me good vision clearance. When I look in my rearview mirror, it's not blocked by a radiator. It also helps when I'm doing wheelies. It's not dragging the radiator end on the back side of the buggy, and it keeps the fans from getting messed up if something were to hit the back of the buggy or if I backed into something. So it seems to me like there's a lot of benefit to having it towards the front of the buggy, or the front of the motor, and behind the seats. So we're going to try that this year, and that's one of the benefits about having a buggy like this, is I can fabricate whatever I need to between seasons and go out with a different configuration of buggy every year. So whatever I find out works the best, that's what we'll keep. If it doesn't work, if it overheats, if the radiator springs a leak and it gets fluid all over me, then I'll rip it out and I'll start over again. I'll put it in a different location. We'll try it next year. So that's one of the benefits about having a buggy like this or a rail like this. You know, you can just fabricate, you can modify, you can keep doing things to it until you get the right combination, and it works for you. So we're going to try it this year that way, and we're going to go from there. But I'm interested in what you guys think. Please comment below and let me know your thoughts. And here's the most fun tool in my shop. This is the Rogue Fabrication tubing bender. They're not paying me. I'm not sponsored by them. I bought this with my own money. But I tell you what, I sure can't beat it. I bought it a couple of years ago for my Dune Buggy project. I bought the kit where you have to weld it together. It was a little cheaper that way. I had to go to Harbor Freight and get the hydraulic ram, but that wasn't any big deal. It still cost me less to buy it as a kit. It did come with the 1.5" roller die and the 1.5" pressure roller. So heavy duty setup, and it's bent everything I've asked it to bend and then some. So I went up to the Rogue Fabrication facility. The guys up there are great. They walked me through the shop, showed me what was going on, and all the things that they had for sale. Man, I wish I had some money. But anyway, the guys are great up there. You know, don't hesitate to ask them questions. Call them up, ask them questions. They're a great group of guys, and they do you right. And the machine is a very quality machine. They've got dies galore, so don't be afraid to give them a call and tell them what you got and what you're trying to do. They'll help you out. They've always helped me out. So today we're gonna bend up the tube to do the cross piece for the Radiator and the Dune Buggy, and we'll show you how this thing works. Let's bend some tube. So today we're going to be bending up 1.5" 095 round tubing. So it helps to have a couple of clamp blocks. The clamp blocks are pretty cool. They go together just 9/16. You just tighten them down or snug them down. We're using just the plain Jing 1.5" 095 wall. So put the clamp block on there. I've cut it a little bit long because I haven't done this in a while, so I wanted to make sure that all my math was working out the way I wanted it to. We'll stick it in the tubing bender. I have the high pressure dies, which are rounded. They work together pretty well here. So I've got 1.5" dies in here. So we have the clamp block in there, again, pretty much at the end of the pipe. We're going to watch that really closely as we start to draw the bend, and just make sure that the clamp block isn't sliding out away from it. We'll go to 45 degrees, we'll check the spring back, and then we'll tighten it up again and bend it to the 45 degrees that we want. And then we'll double check the measurements and make sure that it's coming out. So as we start to roll forward here, we're just going to go real slow until this guy starts to tighten up. Once he's tight, then we know that it's going to start to bend, and that's our 0 point. Okay, so that was pretty quick, but he zeroed out. The pin for the clamp block stopped moving. We're going to watch the clamp block really closely to make sure it's not sliding on the pipe as it's drawing it through the die there. Like I said, we're going to use magnetic angle finder. We're going to put it on 0 here. Okay, there's 45 exactly on the angle finder. So we're going to release the pressure on the tube so we can see what the spring back is on this pipe. All right, so we got the pipe loose, and then we're gonna run him forward again. Again, when this pin gets tight, then we know that it's gonna start to draw the pipe through the bender. So when this tightens up, we'll look at where we are on the degree wheel and see what kind of spring back we've got. Right there. Okay. So now we look at the angle finder here, and we see that we are at about 43 degrees. So what that means is we have 2 degrees of spring back. So we're going to run him up to 47 degrees, and that should give us, when it springs back, it should give us the 45 that we're looking for. So we're going to run it on up to 47 degrees. Okay, it's about right there. So when we release this guy, it should be right at 45 degrees now. We'll leave the clamp block on there just in case we need to bend him some more. Never had that happen before. So it wrinkled the inside here. Typically when I bend the tubing, it's got a nice clean bend here. I don't know what happened, but we're going to keep it. I mean, it's non-structural, so it's not a big deal. But I'm very interested in why that happened. Alright guys, let me catch you up. I had to shut you down because the camera ran out of battery, so it's been on the charger most of the day. So I went ahead and did some stuff without you. So I'm going to bring you in close here, but what we've done is we've got the crossbar for the lower radiator mounts, and then we built an upper bar that wraps around the radiator to kind of protect it a little bit. But it also gives me a location to do the upper radiator mounts here in the stock location. So the radiator is out of a 95 Nissan Sentra. So it was the right size. It was a 4-cylinder. It had 2 electric fans on it. And it has the mounting points on the bottom that don't bolt, but they slip into some grommet holes in the very bottom. And then they bolt on the very top here. So I think it's going to do what we need. The outlet for the lower radiator hose is on the driver's side as we're looking at it, and then on the passenger side is the inlet, the upper radiator hose location, and it corresponds with the locations for the thermostat. Will go over to the upper radiator hose on the passenger side, and then on the driver's side the lower radiator hose will go into the water pump. So it's all going to work out here as far as location of the outlets on the radiator. We'll have to run some copper tube. That's coming up, but I wanted to get the radiator mocked up so we could see what we were looking at. I got it all tacked in, and the radiator's mounted, and it looks pretty good. It's level with the buggy and then with the motor. It's got the same kind of rake on it that the motor has. So I think it's going to work just fine. So as I said, I'm going to bring you in close, and I'm going to take a couple of shots of where I've tacked this thing up and what it looks like as far as the lower cross member and then the upper radiator brace. So I'll bring you in close. So we wanted the radiator to sit low in between the motor and the fuel tank, which is covered by the black blanket here. We wanted to use up that space with this radiator location. So here's the radiator location. Here's how we mounted the radiator. So fans to the back of the buggy. So we tacked them in. So we got a couple of tacks here, just kind of holding things in place so that we could mock this up. I've got the mounting tabs for the upper mounts on the radiator, both sides. But it uses that space really nicely. It's not too big and bulky to where it takes up all of it. The upper brace piece here is mounted so that it's slightly tipped forward, so that it kind of protects the upper radiator tank. It won't have any issues with filling or air bubbles. And the radiator and the upper brace actually sit just below the upper part of the seat. So when I look in my rear view mirror, I can't see that bar unless I sit up in my seat and I kind of look for it. So that was a big deal for me, is making sure that I could see out the back of the buggy. So we tacked it here and here, there. I did a little bit more of a weld there. But I cheated on this lower bar here. The bend wasn't right, and I was losing pipe. So because this is non-structural, what I did was I had a spare piece. So I chopped off the fish mouth side of that piece, and then cut off the cross pipe or cross tube here, so that I could fix this short piece to it. So you can see my tack weld there, but it also provided the spacing from the bottom of this bar to the cross piece, so that when we set it up in the buggy, this bar was level, so that it matched the torsion tube and all the rest of the cross bars in here. This bar was level at that point. So rather than building in a bunch of angles that tend to start tweaking frames, I wanted this crossbar to be as level as I could get it. So again, because this is non-structural, I chopped him on the end here in order to save this cross piece, and I welded in, or I'm going to weld in this this fish mouth piece here, so that it fits up tight against the tube. But that's how I cheated. I'm going to finish up welding on the radiator mount system here. Weld him all in there and just make sure that he's solid enough. If he's not solid, and if this upper brace shakes or is unstable, what I may do is just create a cross piece or a stabilizer bar to go from here down to the frame. So it tightens everything up and holds everything solid so that no welds break. Well, as I said before, I can booger weld with the best of them. Some of the welds are pretty, some of them are not. I'm going to go over them with a grinder. Then we'll paint it up. But it doesn't look like I'm going to need those cross braces in there. That's pretty solid. It's not bouncing at all. So I'm not anticipating a lot of vibration, at least in this particular location here. I mean, it doesn't move back and forth either, so like it did when it was just tacked in there. So I'm a little more confident that I don't need the cross braces. We'll run it like this for this year. If I need the cross braces, I'll go back and check and make sure that none of the welds cracked. But if I need to run cross braces, I'll put a cross brace in from about midway up on this upper bar down to the frame itself. I think that'll work. But so we've got a different mount location for the radiator. It used to be back here on the back of the buggy. We shortened the buggy by that much, and we are making better use of a big vacant space between the motor and the gas tank over the top of the transaxle. Still keeps the weight behind the axle, so better doing wheelies and all of that. But next up, I think we're going to take some of that 1 3/4 tube, and we're going to bend up an exhaust for this. I think that'll be really cool. And then we will get in here with some copper tubing and figure out how we want to run the lines. And then from there, once we get the exhaust on, once we get the plumbing done, then it's wiring. That's the easy stuff on this particular one because I've already weeded the wires. I've already gotten the computer isolated, got the engine harness isolated. It's just coming up with a mounting location for the computer. I've got the fuel pump and fuel filter mounted on its own bracket, which is kind of nice. That came with my 83 fuel injected turbo. We still got that motor. That's going to go in a different project. But anyway, 93 Ford Ranger pickup, 2300 fuel injected. Got the dual spark plugs and all that nonsense. But when you boil it down, the wiring for this after spark system here, it's not bad, and you can actually mix the wires so that basically you are firing when it's supposed to fire to make the engine run. So anyway, I'm not sure what good that does, but we might try it, see if we can get a hotter spark, get a little bit more power out of it. But we're getting close. We're within a couple of days of making it run, I'm sure. So we're going to keep after it. Like I said, we're going to bend the exhaust up, and then we're going to go get some of that copper tubing, 1-inch copper tubing, and we're going to find some routing locations. We may have to make some brackets to hold the copper line so it doesn't bounce around, and it's got a home. But yeah, it's coming along. I think that's going to do it for this video here. We fabricated up a new radiator location. You saw how I did it, and hopefully that gets you guys out there in your shop kind of figuring out your stuff, and gives you some ideas on how to do it. Again, you know, I can't say enough about the Rogue Fabrication bender. I love that thing. The 1.5" 095 wall, that seems to be just a little thin because it crinkled the corners here, and I'm not sure if maybe I was doing something wrong or something, but I think it's just a little bit too thin of a wall to bend in that machine on a 4.5-inch radius. It might do better on a 6-inch radius, but because this stuff wasn't structural, I wasn't too worried about it, and it did just fine. So anyway, we're gonna cut it off there, and we'll see you next time on Jardin Autoworks. Thanks.